Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to this segment of Coach Gurbani's a-sabad-a-day. We are reaching the midpoint of Gauri Sukhmani Mahalla Panjwa. We'll be reciting the 12th Ashtapadi rather, and Salok, and we begin with the Salok first. Salok Sukhi Basai Maskinia, aap nivar tale, bade bade ahankariyan, Nanak garb gale. The essential message here, Sukhi Basai Maskinia. The humble in spirit are self-effacing, and they rest in peace because they find peace having effaced their ego. Sukhi Basai Maskinia, aap nivar tale. If you recall, Guru Arjan had given us a definition of Sukhi, that is to say, those who have found or discovered, or those who have awakened rather to self-knowledge. Sukhi Basai. But you have to be a maskeen, poor in spirit, and it also means you have to give up your notions, your arrogant and haughty notions of ego pride, because bade bade ahankariyan nanak garab gale. Arrogance and pride which are attached to the ego, people who live out of that fulcrum actually just stew in their ego pride. They're just stewing all the time. And that's the central theme here. The emphasis that the Guru is trying to place is on the fact that the Creator Self is really the cause, the ultimate cause. It is the effect, and it is the actual agent of all activity that carries on in the universe. So for us to think that we are some centers of experience that are isolated from one another, that is the notion that the Guru has set out to demolish. And so let's see how he does it. They who carry pride of dominion, jiske antar raj abhiman. Well, their life is hellish, and it's a dog's life. So narakapati, they get hell, hovat swan, living a dog's life. And they who pride themselves on their youthfulness, jo jane main jo banvant, they are like critters, worms. He's called them crawling worms of dirt excrement. So hovat vishta ka jant. Very strong words. And they who pride themselves to be of noble action, apas ko karamavant kahave, they perpetuate the cycle of birth and death for themselves. What that means is that when we act out of an ego consciousness, we are leaving impressions of desire behind, and they, in time, acquire life again. That is why we get into this addictive cycle, because they never really go away. So that is what the Guru is saying. If you pride yourself in your actions, in other words, if you're attached to your actions, then be sure that you will continue in this cycle. And those who take pride in their wealth and holdings, well, they're ignorant and they're blind to reality. And so when the self in its kindness bestows on us this humility, is when we actually get to self-knowledge. That's really the thing. So pride in actions. What is pride in actions? What does pride here mean? It simply means that I'm the actor. I, meaning I, whoever I is, in my case, Ravinder Singh. I, Ravinder Singh, and actually the actor, meaning initiating the action. I have agency. What the Guru is saying, no, you do not have agency. The agent is the self, and the doer is the self. You are simply a tool. And that is how you have to see yourself, as a tool. And he goes on in the second Ashtapadi, talking again about pride in different activities and the sorts of things that we all take pride in. He counts the wealthy who pride themselves on their wealth. Again, he's warning them. You should know that nothing's going to go with you. We all know that. We can't pin our hopes on others. Bahalaskar manuk upar kare aas is to pinning your hopes. Even on a lot of people, you could be destroyed in an instant. Palabhitar taka hoye binas, meaning no one's going to be able to protect you when the time comes. If you pride yourself in your power, you may have some sort of power in you. You might be, I don't know, the head of a country. You might be running a big multinational. You might feel that you have power. Well, the Guru says it can be reduced to ashes in an instant. Kidme hoye jaye bhasmant. So don't be self-presumptuous, because we can be laid low by the messenger of death anytime. So Nanak says, this self-pride, this notion of me being the actor, the agent, has to be erased, and it can be erased only through Guru wisdom. They who erase their self-pride transcend their ego, and self-pride is erased by Gur Prasad, Jaka Mite Abhiman. So you see the connection, it's pretty clear. He speaks a little bit more about actions performed from the fulcrum of ego. We've already touched on this. He's calling it Srama Pave Sagale Birthare. All is in vain and a waste of effort if the fulcrum of your actions, the perspective that you have, is coming from this conditioned mind, which I have been calling the ego. So it is the conditioning of the mind. If you're looking at the world through the lens of your conditioning, then you're simply perpetuating the state of being that you are in. You're caught in that state. You're not going to get out of that rut. Whether it is ascetic self-control, anik tapasya, whether it is any other religious practice done with the ego mind, anik jatan kar, anik tapasya kar, and if you do it with ahankar, then the Guru says, anik jatan kar atam nahi drave, meaning you're not going to soften your ego, your mind, your conditioned mind. As a matter of fact, you're going to harden it. So he then poses a question. He says, how then can one approach the dargah? Dargah, again, as we have talked about, is a threshold of consciousness where it is the meeting line of ego consciousness and self-awareness. So we have to imagine it. It is obviously not a physical line. We have to imagine. So the Guru uses dargah to be that threshold where you are ready to step into this higher consciousness, where that change of state occurs. That's what a threshold is. So how then, he says, can we approach that threshold? Because we cannot proclaim ourselves to be enlightened. Aapas ko jo pala kahave, tise palai nikat na aave. So service of humanity is one way to dissolve the ego. Sarab ki rein ja ka man hoye, kaho nanak taki nirmal hoye. That is the way you remove the impediments of the ego mind, the conditioned mind. You place others ahead of you. You're not driven by selfish desires. And then again, in the fourth Ashtapadi, it's the same theme. So long as the individual perceives the I to be the author of its actions, the goal of Sukh, or self-knowledge. Remember, Guru Arjan had defined Sukh. Self-knowledge will remain elusive. You see, jab lag jane mujhte kash hoi, as long as I think that I am the source of my power, tab isko sukh nahi koi. You stay removed from self-knowledge. Sukh will be elusive. Because जब एक जाने मैं किश करता तब लग गर्भ जोन में फिरता. Because this feeling of I being the actor of my actions ties me to the wheel of birth and death. We spoke about that a little earlier. So as long as the ego sense differentiates between friend and foe, and as long as the ego mind is attached to the illusion of the senses, it faces the ruling hand of death. Till then, the mind cannot be steady. Jab lag nahi chal nahi cheet, jab tare ko bari meet. You make these distinctions. Jab lag moho magana sangamai, sensual pleasures, or just attachment to the senses. So self-knowledge will be elusive. This bondage will break through compassion of the self. Prabh kirpa te e bandhan toote. Guru prasad nanak how chute. The ego, you're freed from the conditioned mind. The mind now has reached the threshold and transformed itself into the higher mind, the self, if you will. And then the Guru reverts back in the 5th section of the Ashtapadi to list out what we are doing and how and why these are all activities that are useless. Sahas khate lakho ko uthtave. It doesn't matter that you've earned thousands. An individual still aspires. He'll get out of bed for hundreds of thousands. You may consume a pleasure once, but you will want it over and over again until you die. But satisfaction will remain elusive, and the thirst of desire will never be quenched. Tripat na ave, maya pashe pave. This will not happen. How will it happen? Bina santokh nahi ko rajye. Without contentment, this satisfaction cannot be had. Santokh is the key, absolute key. You have to have contentment, which means at a very fundamental level, it means accepting the way things are and not resisting the way things are, because otherwise all of your plans and all of your schemes are just like plans made in a dream. Bina santokh nahi ko rajya, supan manorath birthe sab kachhe. All actions are in vain then. And then he speaks about Naam Rang Sarv Sukh Hoi, Vadapagi Kise Parapat Hoi. Karan Karavan Ape Aap, Sada Sada Nanak, Har Jab. Only a fortunate few find self-knowledge. And the self, again, is our potential. It is within us. Nanak says, seek the self. And the self, again, he reminds us, is the cause, the effect, and the activating agent. So we need to get to know that within us, which is the cause, the effect, and the activating agent. You see? So the Guru is actually posing a question, when the self is the cause, the effect, and the activating agent, how on earth can the ego self do anything? You see? But that is based on our view of the world, our vision of ourselves, because we've been conditioned. We've been led to believe that it is I who has to go out into the world and accomplish things, you see. We dream, we're ambitious. But the Guru says, so whatever your worldview is, you're going to behave and develop accordingly. So adopt the worldview of Gurmat, so that you're guided by that worldview. And that worldview tells you that the self is all in all, and it plays the cosmic game as it pleases. It is the indweller, yet transcendent. It is all-knowing. It is the one and the many, untouched by time and death. Get to know that. Getting to know that means develop your mind to get to that point. And this self is present within its creation. And how is it present? As the source of knowledge and instruction. आप उपदेश से समझाए, आप पे रचिया सबके साथ. That knowledge is woven into every body, every mind. So the mind has to begin to listen to this instruction, because the self does instruct its creatures and it causes its own expansion. But we don't quite listen to it. That is why we are going against the flow. And swimming upstream is a futile task. That's what we are doing, though. So the Guru assures us that everything belongs to the self. Nothing is separated from it. Sab kish uska o karne haar uste bin kaho kish hoye. Nothing is separated from it. The self is present at all places and also in the gap between places. You see? Uste bin kaho kish hoye. Than thanantar ek soye. Thanantar, the space, the gap between things. Apane chalat aap kar raha. It directs its cosmic play itself. And what we see is a marvel of infinite variety of things. Apane chalat aap karne haar, kautak, a marvel. Kare rang apar, infinite diversity. Man mein aap, man apne mein, nanak कीमत कहाँ न जाए. Now here is the key. The self is in the mind and the mind is in the self, but the two don't know each other. The mind is potentially the self. So Nanak says, seek that self through developing the mind. And you need good wisdom, that direction. And in conclusion, Sat 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 Prabh Swami Gur Prasad Kine Vakhani Sach 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 Sab Gina Kina Kot Madhe Kine Birle China Pala 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 Tera Roop At Sundar Yapar Anoop Nirmal 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 Teri Bani घट घट सुनी श्रवण बख्याणी पवित्र 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 पुनीत नाम जपै नानक प्रीत. So amidst the multitudes of people, it is the rare one who is Guru guided, who seeks Guru wisdom, and who grasps this truth that has been told. That is, the Prabh is Swami, the Master, and it is eternal. It is always here. It is always present. It always was present. And it was present even before time. You see? So this is the truth that only rare people realize. We might all intellectually understand it, but to realize it, to discern it, is quite another matter. And the Ashtapadi ends with a eulogy to the Creator. Noble indeed is the creation of the Creator Self. It is beautiful beyond compare. That cosmic form is just sublime. And the language of the Self is rarefied, refined. It is present in every heart. We need to understand that language and then to begin to speak that language. On that note, until the next time, Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.